Segment 2, Golden Black Live. Brian Neubert joins me, and I'm really glad because I haven't seen Brian in a week, I don't think. So that's a me problem. But our schedules have been in this mobile world we live in. Aren't always in the same room, but we are right now. And Brian just got back from availability as the Boilermakers head to Northwestern later today, I believe. They'll be busing up to Evanston, but. You made the trip to New Jersey and watched what we've seen a lot of this year, a slow start and a team that fought to the end and had a chance at the end. But how do you assess where Purdue is right now? Is obviously tomorrow night is a very, very important game.
Well, they're in the same place they've been all along.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is that this pattern of behavior, this pattern of inconsistency has just been one Purdue's not been able to break. I mean, we asked them. It's been this every other game basis for weeks, if not the whole season, where Purdue's fine at home, get a big win at home, look really good doing it, and then you say to yourself, hey, perhaps that was the turning point.
Yeah.
And then when it comes time for it to be proven to be a turning point, it's more of the same. It's the starts. It's not the finishes. It's the starts. It's these first 10 to 15 minutes of these games, it's hard to even say the first 5 minutes because Purdue for the first 5 minutes at Rutgers was fine.
Fine, yeah, up 5-2.
And it always sounds so simple when the players come out afterwards and just said, we need more energy. Well, it just seems so simple to just go out there and just be energetic, but it's not always that simple in sports, and they have to find that whatever they need from the jump, because once they're down 10, X number of minutes into every game, they're fine. They play people even to, if not better than. If you're not down 10 points early at Nebraska, you probably win that game. Yeah. You don't turn the ball over too much in the first half against Michigan, you probably win that game. If you're not down 20-4 at Maryland, who knows what happens? I mean, there are no guarantees on any of those fronts that the games would unfold as they did after the game started the way it did, but you don't know because that's how it's happening. Purdue just has to find consistency, has to find energy, has to find the ability to make the play in the moment that they need to make. They need to find the stabilizing influences on this team, which to this point there really haven't been any, and they just need to start these games better. They're just really, really showing some fatal flaws here on the road that have to be remedied one way or another.
Yeah, and how you do that. And tomorrow, Northwestern's obviously a team that's struggled. They beat Nebraska at their only home win, only conference win to date. Yet this was a team that gave Purdue some challenges in Mackey Arena in December. It was not a easy victory, certainly. What do you see for tomorrow night besides the importance of that game?
Yeah, it's on Purdue. I mean, it's on Purdue. I mean, they are head and shoulders better than Northwestern, in my opinion. I think everybody in the Big Ten other than Nebraska is head and shoulders better than Northwestern. The thing, too, when you look at the first game, Purdue has been able to count on pretty good shooting in Mackey Arena. That's why they've been so good at home and so not so good on the road. But in that game, they were 5 of 22 from 3. So Purdue, I know there were moments where they had to sweat, in the first 35 minutes of that game.
Yeah.
But
then it's separated.
Purdue still beats them by 14 points without shooting the ball well, which has been their stabilizing influence at home. So that tells you how much better Purdue is than Northwestern, probably. I know you take nothing for granted in these situations. I know Purdue has been lousy on the road. But it's just on Purdue. It's just on Purdue to play really hard, to rebound, to take the best shots it can take, to not beat itself, because so much of what's gone into these road struggles have just been simply Purdue beating itself. I think you're going to see, Purdue do some things differently tomorrow night from a lineup perspective. Matt Painter told us at practice that he's going to probably mess with his starting lineup again. This was one of the matchups where you could go big and it makes sense, but I think that ship has sailed. I think first of all, there's no way you're taking Evan Boudreaux out of the starting five right now when he's playing harder than everyone. And that's what you need probably as much as anything. But I do think he's going to tinker with his lineup a little bit more, whether that's Jihad Proctor coming into the starting five after a pretty good game at Rutgers, whether that would be for Sasha Stefanovic or Eric Hunter or even Nogel Eastern, I don't know. But he's going to try something. And something's got to work here eventually because you've got to get off to a good start. You've got to find that energy one way or another.
you know, you would do the upon further review for just about every game that is feasible with the schedule. Are you seeing things when you watch the game again, and you're seeing these games in real time and in front in these venues at home or on the road for the most part? But what are you seeing things differently after you go back and watch the game? Is there anything that jumps out at you that I know you've written that a great deal on the site, but tell us what is an overriding feeling what you see.
Yeah, Purdue's guards at this stage of their development are really a big part of the root cause of this team's offensive struggles. That they're just, obviously they're sophomores. Look, Purdue's not young.
Yeah.
I mean, if people are calling Purdue a young team, I don't know if that's necessarily accurate. What they are is unproven.
Yeah.
And obviously last year you had some really good guards in Carson Edwards and Ryan Klein who commanded a ton of attention.
Yeah.
These guys do not command the same level of attention. You're running the same offense for these guys as you are those guys, but they don't command the same level of attention. That does not mean there's not tons of opportunities for these guys to score, but when Matt Harms rolls to the basket in pick and roll, last year Ryan Klein was a savant at hitting him for dunks, a savant, and it opened up maybe a little bit better because people were holding on the ball screen a little bit longer on Klein and Carson Edwards because of their ability to pull up and shoot. But Purdue misses him time and time again. Purdue needed its big guys to be really consistent scoring threats. But the problem for Purdue is, A, everybody in the Big Ten has a good big guy or a really good big guy now, so Purdue's advantages don't stand out as advantages the way maybe we figured they would. Mm-hmm. But also the big guys are so dependent on the guards to get them the ball or to make plays off of them. At Rutgers, they missed Matt Harms and screen and roll. I don't know how many times. That's not a new development. There was a play where they posted up Travion Williams. He makes the perfect play out of a double team, throws it to Eric Hunter in the corner. Hunter, I'm not sure what happened there, but he wasn't ready to shoot with 5 seconds on the shot clock. Would have had a wide open three. I don't know what the issue has been sometimes, but it is just part of the big picture of the fact that Purdue's guards are just not ready to be the sorts of players maybe they'll be as seniors or juniors, and their lack of playmakers and their lack of ability to make plays in adverse environments really, really hold this team back offensively. That's just kind of the nature of it. I mean, people wonder how the roster gets to this place. Well, this is college basketball.
Yeah.
You don't have everything you need all the time if you're doing things a certain way. You had Ryan Klein and Carson Edwards last year. If you don't lose one early to the NBA, or if you redshirt the other one, you're fine. You have Jaden Ivey and Ethan Morton coming in next year. Freshmen are not always the panacea to all of your problems, as people, sometimes convince themselves they are. But you're in this window where you're relying a lot on guys who haven't been relied on in these situations before, in terms of Eric Hunter, in terms of Sasha Stefanovic, in terms of Isaiah Thompson, and you're just going through the growing pains at a really, really important position.
All right. Wanted to ask you a couple questions just on as we look ahead in football recruiting. Obviously, National Signing Day Part 2 is this week. Hard to know if anything is going to happen from a Purdue perspective. There's obviously been some moves around the transfer portal of teams around Purdue, but any sense for will we have any drama on Wednesday, or will wait and find out? How do you see that?
Well, they're waiting on Malik Hornsby, the quarterback in Texas. That's really the only guy who kind of comes to mind here. They messed around with some defensive backs here. They messed around with some. They've recruited some defensive linemen, but to my knowledge, the only real. It's possible they slipped somebody in for a visit right before signing day. Who that would be, I don't know. But they are waiting on Malik Hornsby from Texas. Where they stand there, I don't know. Arkansas, I think, is going to be
hard to beat in that
a
one.
real factor there. But I'm not aware of anything going on. Doesn't mean anything can't change. But I also think that the story of Purdue's finishing out of its recruiting class is going to be determined by the transfer portal, by the graduate transfer wire, whatever it may be, late signing junior college players, and that's not dependent on the signing date necessarily. The JUCOs might be, not always, but
Could be.
most of the time. But the transfer wire can play out whenever, and it's not uncommon for that to happen because guys still have to graduate from the schools that they're at the moment. I know Purdue had an offensive lineman in last weekend for what I assume is an official visit. I can't get any further information than that to this point, but they are still recruiting the hell out of offensive linemen and a variety of other positions. So that will be kind of where things go from here. That's not necessarily tied to the signing date next week.
Yeah, you look back at
this week.
bouncing back to basketball and a question that has come up about just kind of crazy the week in the Big Ten when Wisconsin loses 2 players, one to suspension and one leaves the program. Ohio State has a standout freshman that is going to at least be departing for a short term. We don't know for sure. Just a really interesting year in the Big Ten, and the parity's there, but those roster moves could really be damaging to both those teams.
Yeah, and has balanced the season as I can remember because the league flipped.
Yeah.
The teams that haven't been so hot the last couple of years, Illinois, Penn State, Rutgers, are now up here.
Yeah.
Everybody else is kind of in that chewy middle and have to sort of differentiate themselves one way or another. I think Michigan State's still probably the best team in the league. But after that, between them and Nebraska and Northwestern, it feels like everybody's the same. And I think that's why the home court advantage has been so pronounced.
Yeah.
Is that when, in the Big Ten, history says that when 2 teams are equal, the home team is going to have a pretty significant advantage. And in the Big Ten this year, everybody's equal.
Yeah.
I think you'd probably call Purdue average to better than average. But there just aren't as many games where you can count on beating them, and them, like you could before. And the teams you can count on beating, you already lost to one of them.
Yeah.
So that's a loss that will haunt them, has haunted them, and will continue to haunt them. Nebraska, obviously.
Yeah, that and Purdue cannot repeat that.
And tomorrow's another one of those games.
Yeah, only a chance for a bad loss left on the schedule, really, when you look at it, and yet it would be a devastating loss if Purdue does not get that one done. One that would take several wins on the road to uncover or to make up, if that can even happen.
Yeah.
I agree with that. All right, another obviously a tragic event this week in the death of Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and the 7 other people on that helicopter in the Los Angeles area. I thought you wrote some interesting things just about Kobe's effect on never played college basketball. It's been talked about a fair amount this week, but the effect on the kids of today. Maybe it's the Etwan Moores and Rob Hummels, but it's also guys that are playing now that he had an impact on. Now that we're a few days from it, it still takes a while to get used to the notion that this went down, so to speak.
Yeah.
But your perspective there.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of somebody who's invested in basketball,
Yeah.
who obviously lives around basketball, who has made his career off basketball, you cannot watch basketball without seeing him, without seeing some of his influence. He has instilled confidence in thousands of players, thousands and thousands of players. That sort of stuff transcends sports too. That inspires people to do whatever they might want to do in their lives too. I mean, that stuff matters. That stuff is a lasting legacy of his. I mean, obviously you're talking about one of the great scorers ever in NBA history, but one of the best two-way players as well. He made defense cool as well. More than that, he made hard work cool.
Yeah.
And as I wrote in my thing, if not for Kobe Bryant and his obsessive work ethic, his obsessive demand for excellence, not only from himself but the people around him, what's to say Carson Edwards works the way he worked to become the player he became? What's to say Caleb Swanigan, probably one of the players at Purdue most personally affected by this because he is a huge Kobe guy. What's to say he, is almost robotic about his work ethic? What's to say P.J. Thompson? The one thing about P.J. Thompson, you remember, that kid wasn't really a scorer per se for Purdue, but every time a big shot came his way, he made it.
Yeah.
And he was a big shot maker who was always ready to shoot. He was a huge Kobe guy. You can't tell me that didn't inspire him to be that player. And his freshman year, even when he wasn't even, a leading player for Purdue, he was always ready for that moment. And that's what the point I was trying to make about Kobe was that I think he is part of almost everybody who plays basketball nowadays, whether they realize it or not, whether people on the outside realize it or not. It's just an unbelievable loss for the basketball community and someone who, whose legacy and influence on the game will last for eternity.
No doubt. All right. Well, saddened by that news, to say the least. So we're going to take a short break here and bring in Tom Dienhart. Tom and I will finish up the last segment, take a little bit of football, a little bit of Super Bowl talk as well. And stay tuned for Brian's work on the site as he'll be doing his Northwestern preview and all that upcoming as well. So take a 2-minute break, and we'll see you in about 120 seconds on Golden Black Live.